Mm-hmm.
you know, that Oma used to have in her house on the
Aunt
stairwell.
Rosalind?
Aunt Rosamond
Rosamond.
was a painter,
Okay.
and she painted that lovely picture of,
Of
Granddad in
Granddad.
the white shirt.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know where that is now. Jay and Tony took it down a long time
Oh,
ago.
really?
Um, so there was one sister who was a painter, and one tutor sister, who was a silver, made very beautiful silver jewelry, I think. So there's a lot of not famous art, but
Mm-hmm.
artistic genes in
Mm-hmm.
the Tudor family that I think have passed on and on and on. I mean, certainly just even down to Jerry Ingersoll, and what they've all sort of. Nobody's been a great artist.
Mm-hmm.
Tasha Tudor probably was the most well known of any of
Mm-hmm.
them, but there was this gene
Right.
that for artistic talent that's come down through, with Dad, come down through the family.
And when you saw the house on Oldham Road, nobody was living there at that time?
No, Elizabeth Acomper, who was a tutor also. Her, that's a whole other long story, and I would probably get it all screwed up if I tried to tell you that. But anyway, she owned the house with her two brothers. She lived up in the
Right.
cabin there, and they owned the yellow house and that house and the red house. And I forget how it came from Mrs. William Tudor to I mean, if there's a generation in between, there has to have been a generation. There was Delia Tudor that is on the plaque at Juggernaut.
Mm-hmm.
But then there was the original Delia Tudor, who's written about, who married Captain Stewart, who was the Commodore of the SS Constitution during the Revolutionary War. Well, anyway, I had that very interesting book with a lot of stuff about the Delia Tudor in it that you might not have seen.
Which book is that?
It's one I found about a few months ago
Mm-hmm.
on the remainder table at the toadstool. I just happened to pick it up, but it's got a lot of interesting stuff in it. Anyway, remind me to show
Sure.
it to you, because I just loaned it to Delia Daniels, whose real name is Delia, who is in Summerhill, which is an assisted living place. She'd been living here all by herself and had ended up very badly, so they had to put her. She was in very bad physical shape. So she's in a wheelchair there. Anyway, so where are we now?
So, you find this place up on Old Dublin Road, and you decide you want it, so you bought it immediately, or?
Yeah, well, the thing is that we were looking for a place, we were looking for a piece of land and maybe whatever. We were not planning to spend anything more than maybe about $9,000, because Dad had, the people who had served in World War II could get GI mortgages, so you could take out a big loan, and I think the interest was something like 2% on a GI mortgage. And in those days, he used to get $2,000 a year from the Wren Trust. And so we thought, we could buy something. Land $2 an acre, for heaven's sakes. We thought we could do it. Anyway, so we went and we met with the lawyer for the Red House. And you remember the Annibals? Nate Annibal?
Right, yeah.
His mom, Anne Annibal. Am I saying this right? Yeah. Anne Annibal was Nate's mother, wasn't she? Yes. Yes. His mother No, I'm getting mixed up. Anyway, Anne Annabelle and her husband, Tony Annabelle, had rented the house very briefly for a few months before we saw it, and they'd moved out. And so when you asked if anybody had been living there, Anne Annabelle was Bob English's, I'm getting you all mixed up, was Bob English's granddaughter. Yeah. No, daughter. It was Bob English's daughter by his first wife. Anyway, before I got tied up with the animals.
Yeah, so you saw that you could afford it. You thought you could.
Well,
afford it.
we went to see the lawyer and said no, the price was much too high. There was no possibility.
What was the
of
asking
buying
price?
it. And I forget what they were asking,
Mhm.
but we eventually, and then we didn't like the border. The line was to end right as the steps go down into the meadow. And the other land, the yellow house, was all, because the Tudors were dividing up between the cottage where Elizabeth lived, the red house, and the yellow house.
Yeah.
They were dividing all of that up. And it was Elizabeth and her two brothers who then were responsible for it. And they put it all in the hands of the lawyer in Boston. And we said, no way would we accept that. So the lawyer said, well, draw your own boundaries. So we did. And we took, the whole land to the end to the orchard down there. And then we thought, oh, this is much, we talked and got the price down, but still it was almost twice what we were planning to buy or spend on anything than we had. Money that we had, and but eventually we got the house, which was completely furnished with all the furniture, with all the china, with silverware, with sugar in the sugar bowls, with blankets. In fact, I just took off one of the blankets last night before I went to sleep. That was all the sheets and blankets, everything completely furnished. And we paid $14,000 for it, plus getting almost 100 acres of land with it. And I remember when we went to seal the deal, because we had to take out, of course, a big loan to buy it. And we had a meeting with the president of the bank, who was the one that with the place where we got our mortgage. And I saw on the chart how much we would have to pay in interest before we started paying off the capital. I was absolutely outraged, and I accused the president of the bank of being a usurer. Anyway, so that's what we did. And we did take out a big fat loan to buy it, but then we paid off the loan as soon as we could, much before it had to be paid off, because we just didn't like to be in debt. And by that time, not by that time, but by the time we paid it off, Dad had a steady teaching job at Smith, and had done a number of architectural projects that he was well paid for. And
that was just before Aaron was born?
Oh, no. I mean, we
when
bought
you bought
the house. Oh,
yeah.
yes. We didn't pay it off until maybe 10 or 15 years later, but we finally paid it off. And people used to say, oh, but it's very good to have a mortgage for a house. And we thought, no, it means debt. And so we didn't like the idea of debt. So we paid it off with great glee, but it was many years later. But nevertheless, what a racket! I mean, 2% loan. Anyway, it was a happy place. It was a nice place to have a family and